In this video, we discuss Harold Pinter and a few of his works. Harold Pinter was a noted British playwright, screenwriter, director, and actor. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2005. He was born in Hackney, East London, studied at a local school, attended Royal Academy but could not complete his course, associated with theatre and got married with the actress Vivian Merchant. She was a very popular actress. And in 1957, he produced his play, The Room. It was written in the absurdist manner. And the central characters are a couple named Rose and Bert. They are found living in a single room. Rose talks a lot of things about the comfortable atmosphere they have in the room. But no answer is found from Bert. He keeps silence. And a little later, the landlord, Mr. Kidd, comes to visit them. Rose and Kidd engage in a conversation on various subjects, and Beat goes out. And when Bert returns in the evening, he finds Rose beating a black blind man named Riley, because Riley had tried to hire the room in which they live. So it's a question of getting a place to live. And in the beginning, the lady is found admiring about the comforts that she has got in the room. And then, so her comfortable life is threatened by a blind black man. And she is found fighting with him. And Bert, the husband, has been silent from the beginning onwards. And what is he to do? He is not in a position of reacting. And the play is written in the form of absurdist play. And no one comes, no one goes, and nothing seriously takes place in such drama. And we find there are the other important playwrights of the school of absurdism. Samuel Beckett, Edward Bode, Harold Pinter are a few of them. And his second play, The Birthday Party, was closed after 8 performances. It was also written in the format of the absurdist play. And he left Vivian Merchant after 20 years of married life and got married with another lady who was also an actress named Antonia Fraser. And during the last years of his career, Pinter continued to write and act. And the last role played by him was in the play of Samuel Beckett. The title character in Samuel Beckett's one-act monologue, Crab's Last Tape. And it was the character played by Harold Pinter as a last performance. And he died from liver cancer at the age of 78. And as a playwright, he initiated comedy of menace. Harold Pinter is especially noted for his comedy of menace. They are short plays set in a claustrophobic space. So in a narrow space they are set. The narrowness of the space is the major thing that frightens the actors, the characters there in the play. And the play is normally found set in a claustrophobic space. The character will always be in doubt and fear. The Birthday Party, The Dumb Waiter, The Caretaker are a few of his plays written in the format of menace. When we give special emphasis on Birthday Party was produced by him in 1957. And the play begins in the living room of a seaside boarding house, and it is 1950s England. And P.T. the boarding house owner. He is named P.T. Bowles. He is the owner of the boarding house. And he has got his wife Meg Bowles. And both in their 60s, and they have no children. And P.T. and Meg are the people who run the seaside boarding house called the Bowles Boarding House. And when they are engaged in a conversation in the morning, sitting at the table in the hall, in the breakfast room, they speak various things. And P.T. informs Meg that two gentlemen will soon arrive to stay at the boarding house. And Meg becomes flustered, actually, surprised at the news. Normally there are no people supposed to come and stay in the boarding house. And there has been a single boarder in the boarding house for a long time. And he is the central character in the play, named Stanley Weber. And when P.T. informs Meg that there are two gentlemen supposed to come to stay in the boarding house, she becomes flustered, slightly surprised, and recovers to promise that. She promises that she will have a room ready for them. And she then calls out to Stanley Weber and goes and calls out Stanley Weber, the boarder, the one and only boarder of the boarding house for quite a long time, who is asleep upstairs. And when he doesn't answer, she goes to fetch him. She goes to the top floor, in fact, to fetch him. And Stanley is found coming down, and he is the protagonist of the play. He is in his 30s, a bespectacled, unkempt and surly man. He comes down. Stanley and P.T. engage in conversation, and Meg at the same time prepares cornflakes and fried bread for Stanley's breakfast. And P.T. leaves. Meg flirts with Stanley, and she has got motherly love towards Stanley, flirting with Stanley. And Stanley jokingly calls her succulent. He comically calls Meg succulent. And Meg then informs Stanley that two gentlemen are supposed to come to stay in the boarding house. And the news unsettles Stanley, who has been the only boarder for years, and he is not in a position to live with others. And he has been accustomed to live alone in the boarding house. And he accuses Meg of lying, and he doesn't actually believe the news that two gentlemen are supposed to come to stay in the boarding house. But she intimates him that what she has been telling is the truth. And now it is time for Meg to go out for shopping for the boarding house. And a young girl named Lulu, who lives in the neighborhood, comes. She is in her 20s. And she comes there with a package. And Meg instructs Lulu to keep the package from Stanley. Actually, this is a package meant to be presented to Stanley on his birthday. And the day is Stanley's birthday. And it's not known to him. But Meg knows it. In fact, she has arranged to buy a present for Stanley, and the present is brought here by Lulu, the girl who lives in the neighborhood. And she wants Lulu to keep the package away from Stanley, in fact, to give him a surprise. Lulu and Stanley chat for a while. When Meg leaves the place, Lulu and Stanley chat for a while, and mostly about his lack of enthusiasm. She complains about the lack of Stanley Weber's enthusiasm. He is not at all an enthusiastic young man. And his appearance, and he has got a surly appearance. Lulu calls him a washout. Even when he is only in his 30s, he appears as a washout. And then she quickly exits. Stanley then washes his face from the kitchen tap and then leaves by the kitchen door. And it is in the meantime, Goldberg and McCann, the two people who are supposed to come to stay in the boarding house, intimated by P.T. and intimated by Meg to Stanley Weber, the two men, Goldberg and McCann. Goldberg is Jewish and McCann is Irish. And they enter the living room. And they are the two gentlemen who had requested room for the evening. And it becomes immediately apparent that Goldberg and McCann have come under some mysterious purpose to finish a job, and in their opinion they are there in fact to finish a job. And the job in question seems to be Stanley, but details are scarce and no details are being given. The reason why Stanley is to be killed or to take away Stanley is not clearly given. They are there in fact to finish a job. And Goldberg assures McCann that they are at the right house. And Meg now enters, and introductions are made among the three. And Meg becomes reassured on finding the mild temperament and the nice approach of Goldberg. Goldberg seems to be a person with sweet words. And so he is also a lovable person. And he has got a polished manner also. And Meg becomes so easy to deal with Goldberg. But McCann seems to be slightly serious. And Goldberg asks about Stanley. And Meg tells him that Stanley was once a successful pianist. And when Goldberg asks Meg about Stanley, she replies that Stanley was once a successful pianist, but he had to give it up. And the reason was not clearly known. And Meg also reveals that it is Stanley's birthday, and Goldberg suggests that they should have a party that day. And thrilled with the idea, Meg shows the gentlemen their room. And later Stanley returns to the living room. And when Meg tells him about the gentleman, Stanley becomes upset. And in fact, to cheer him up, Meg insists Stanley to open the birthday present. And she offers Stanley the birthday present and wants him to open it. And even though Stanley insists that it is not his birthday, Meg wants him to open the birthday present, telling that it is his birthday. And to humor Meg, he opens the package and finds that there has been a toy drum with the drumsticks. And he hangs the drum around his neck and parades around the table, beating the drum merrily, and his rhyme reaches erratic and chaotic moods. He becomes frantic in beating the drum, and the curtain falls. These are the things that we find in Act 1. Once UGC asked the question, what was the present offered by Meg to Stanley Weber? Meg was offered a toy drum and drumsticks as a present for his birthday. And when Act 2 opens, in the same evening, McCann is found sitting at the living room table, and he is found shredding a newspaper into 5 equal strips and tearing out a newspaper into 5 equal straps. And Stanley arrives and awkwardly greets McCann. McCann congratulates Stanley on his birthday and remarks that it's an honor to be invited to attend the party. And Stanley replies that he wants to be alone. And he tries to leave, and Stanley now prepares to leave, and he's not interested in continuing conversation with McCann. But McCann insists him to sit there at the table. And Stanley speaks of his past, and when McCann questions him, he speaks of his past and suggests that he has never been a person to trouble anyone, that he had done no trouble to anyone. Stanley insists that he has met McCann. He also intimates McCann that he might have seen McCann somewhere before. But McCann denies the connection. And Stanley wants to know why McCann and Goldberg are there at the boarding house. The purpose behind their stay in the boarding house. And McCann replies that they are on a short holiday. And Stanley grabs at McCann's arm, who violently hits him off. And Stanley receives a blow, and he is made into submission. Stanley calms himself and speaks of his love for Ireland. Now, he starts to speak of his love for Ireland, its people, its sunsets, and its police. And he asks McCann to accompany him to a nearby pub, but they become interrupted by the arrival of Goldberg and P.T. Goldberg and P.T. now arrive. And P.T. introduces Stanley to Goldberg. Stanley is introduced to Goldberg by P.T. And Stanley, on finding Goldberg, also refuses to sit down. But Goldberg soothingly calls him and wants him to sit down. And Goldberg and McCann begin to interrogate Stanley about his past. They accuse him of betraying the organization. They are referring to some organization, but exact details of the organization are not given. And they accuse Stanley of killing his wife. And in this context, we come to understand that Stanley had killed his wife, and no details are given. And of his leaving the bride at the altar, and of being a waste of space. And they begin to accuse him of various things. Stanley answers first in a gentle manner, but soon becomes dumb. He could not give answer because of the sheer number of questions. Many number of questions were asked by McCann and Goldberg. And finally Stanley becomes angry and hits Goldberg at his stomach. He hits Goldberg at his stomach. And McCann and Stanley threaten each other with chairs. So then they get into a fight. McCann and Stanley threaten each other with chairs. But they are cooled down. They are cooled down because of the arrival of Meg. And when Meg enters, she is found dressed for the birthday party. And Lulu also arrives. And the party begins. And Lulu and Goldberg flirt while Meg and McCann speak of Ireland. When Meg and McCann speak of Ireland, Lulu flirts with Goldberg. Stanley found sitting all alone at the table. And Meg now suggests that they all play a blind man's buff, a game. Blind man's buff. One person will be blindfolded and he will have to identify the other people. And during Stanley's turn, he is blindfolded by McCann. It was McCann who blindfolded Stanley. And while blindfolding Stanley, he broke the spectacles of Stanley. And after all blindfolding him, he puts down the toy drum on his path, so that Stanley's foot smashes through it. And when Stanley reaches Meg, he begins to strangle her. He begins to strangle Meg. Goldberg and McCann pulls him off. So keeps him away from strangling Mick. Soon the light goes out, and McCann shines his spotlight to discover that. And when the spotlight is given, Stanley is found standing over Lulu, trying to assault her sexually. And he is found giggling like a maniac, laughing like a maniac. And curtain falls. So this is the end of the second act. And the last act is the third act. The next act takes place the next morning. And P.T. is found sitting in the living room reading newspaper. And Meg is also there. And she complains that there is no material for making breakfast. And she goes out to shop, and so while going out to make shopping, she finds Goldberg's car standing on the driveway. And on finding the car, she becomes frightened. And Goldberg now enters the room, sits at the table. And Meg asks about the car, but Goldberg evades the question. He doesn't actually give any answer to the question. And P.T. asks Goldberg about Stanley. Stanley has not yet come. And Goldberg explains that Stanley suffered a nervous breakdown last night. And he needed to be taken to a doctor. That he had a breakdown last night and that he needed to be taken to a doctor. And P.T. now leaves. And McCann is found entering with 2 suitcases. And he tells Goldberg that Stanley is trying to fit his broken glasses into his eyes, and his spectacles broken. In fact, he had been trying to fit his broken glasses into his eyes. And McCann demands that they expedite the job, and it's time that they should have to finish the job. But Goldberg ignores him. And McCann goes and shakes Goldberg angrily and calls him Shimmy. He is called Shimmy by McCann. McCann calls Goldberg Shimmy. And on hearing his name called as Shimmy, so he tried to attack McCann. And Lulu now enters. And when Lulu enters, McCann leaves the space, and Lulu accuses Goldberg of having taken sexual advantage at her the night before.